Now, well, welcome everyone. This is our fourth presentation of this morning of the first Open Data Day in the city of Portland, 2021. We are very glad and happy to have John Ruffing from ESRI, a strategic partner on bringing up to life our Open Data portal. John is going to explain a little bit more about the open data initiatives and purpose that ESRI is actually working. ESRI is the provider for all the geo services at the city. ESRI has had a long relationship with the city of Portland, and is the combination between the platform and the talent in the city, I think, has developed one of the more robust uh, geographical databases, GIS databases in the country. John Ruffin helps local governments and organizations utilize the science of where to help derive meaningful insight, visualize and manage data for solving real world problems. He has a BA in business with concentrations in GIS and Spanish from Northern Arizona University and a master's in GIS science from Northwest Missouri University. He has been working in the spatial intelligence and technology industry for over 15 years from capacities of private industry and private industry to help local government. All right, John, sorry for that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that intro. And thanks everyone for having me. So I guess after that intro, Hector, I don't necessarily need to do an introduction for that part. So I figured I can kind of just jump in. If some of you aren't familiar with ESRI, the acronym stands for Environmental Systems Research Institute. And I've titled the presentation today around open data with initiatives and purpose, and kind of all encompassing the main reason of why, really, what we're doing with the city and utilizing the open data technology that we've grown over the many years, and Portland has been kind of the underlying infrastructure that you guys have been building there is quite impressive. And now we are tapping into that infrastructure, that being GIS or just regular data, and how we're communicating this out to the public. And really, that I want to touch on that why is why I have this slide here. Why is it so important? And everyone really wants to be, a community that's prosperous, sustainable, equitable is really important. Livable, collaborative kind of fits into all those aspects, and transparency is huge. And how and why we're driving towards this around utilizing open data it's really important. So that's that level set here. Because sometimes we get mistaken, I think, is depending on how we're approaching this with an open data mindset is, okay, it's just data, but how are we using it? What are the real world applicable applications of how we're applying this data as an open data set or data sets? And then how are we using these to drive towards these things that we want to accomplish as a city? Not only the stakeholders involved as management or the mayor or the city, the folks working with the city, but the citizens, right? This is what we're all trying to drive towards. And to dive a little bit deeper into that, so how do we create more affordable housing? How do we reduce homelessness? Create more jobs, be more equitable, improve emergency response times. So this all kind of plays into what these goals are. And we always want to have that kind of like a compass directing us towards these types of things that we want to accomplish as a city. And the folks that work there as well, what is your driving force when it comes to how you're maintaining, you're governing, you're pushing out this information and why you're pushing it out? And ultimately having that compass and that kind of wind direction of where we're sailing together and how we're getting to these types of improvements to be more livable, to be more equitable, and diving into these. So this is the why. This is why it's so important. I think some of the aspects of the people on the phone call today from the city of Portland and the citizens who will listen to this as well, and the management and the stakeholders, this is the why. So what you guys are doing in the curation aspects, the governance aspects of the city of Portland is so important in what Hector's been working towards, and why an open data day is necessary. Bring awareness, but then get that compass, get that direction that we're all sailing towards. And so the aspects of how we used to engage, or I guess currently this is the case where we have to do it all online, but that will change eventually. But that current engagement, that we have for the city and the constituents is, typically in person presentations of a sense, but in another is that a lot of folks don't have the access to be able to take off work, to go visit these, to have their voice be heard. And it sometimes can be a limited number of folks. And then also how we're dispersing information out to the public in a sense of PDF, Word docs, other things. And sometimes how that craziness can be pushed out to the public where it doesn't necessarily, it's great to have it there. And that is the aspects of how open data works. But how do we start to formulate plans to be able to help the public address or gain knowledge or gain access to particular topics that, again, what is our driving force? What is that compass that we're driving towards to make a more livable city, to affordable housing, more equitability, reduce homelessness, stuff of that nature. And so there's three kind of patterns that we pulled out. So we've been working with hundreds and thousands over the many years, and it's always a progression, making the technology better, learning from how we're applying it. And currently right now, there's three patterns that we see. The first one, which is the most obvious, is that share data and content. That's what we're driving towards, right? Sharing data and the content, get that information out. Now, kind of that point from the other slide that we have, involve more people. This is important. So how are we involving the folks that can't be there in person, can't take a day off of work, giving them access to, in a voice, to be able to be heard. This is important. And also reaching elusive demographics. And how do we leverage technology to get out? And this is important because this open data, the data that we have, and we'll go over a little bit more in the presentation, but the information being pushed out to our collaborators, our NGOs, the folks that might have access to technology and we want to have access, and we've created that partnership. But then how do we leverage them, and they leverage the data to go out and get this information from the public, the certain neighborhoods, those elusive demographics that we don't have, and how are we making decisions that are going to affect them if we don't have that information? So it's really key, and not just getting it out to the public, but also our partners, our universities. So this access, this point of data, the open data, is so important. Really, I think in Portland too, this is a sensitive subject right now. We need to build trust, inspire action. I think positive action could be a key word here I could add, but we want to really build that trust. So they feel that, what decisions are we making, and what is the data behind these decisions and why we're making it, and communicating that out. So, sometimes that can be a jumble, but the stakeholders that are involved at the city, they have data, they're making decisions off of certain things, and communicating that why, having that compass associated to that, and giving the public the ability to see, oh, I see the data that they're looking at and why they're making these decisions. And kind of reiterate the common pattern. So share that data, important content, involve more people. And that's just not the public, the elusive folks that might not have technology, but working with the collaborators and the NGO folks that can get out there and touch those individuals, and ultimately build that trust and inspire action. So work off of 4 principles, touch on this quickly for open data: accessibility, make it discoverable, it's important, explorable, and collaborative. That is really a key point that this open data, I know some of the folks and how Hector's communicating that as well with the open data aspect of things. This is one and very important part of making this data accessible and usable. So we'll touch a little bit on the background. We won't dive too technical here, but the system that you see in the cloud, we have a system of record. So that is, your 311 data, your fire, your police, your accident information, your biking accident information, your street lights, your stop signs, your curb information, building footprints, parcel information, all that information that the city kind of has feeds into the system. And your system of insight is your analytical aspects of things. So how are we making those decisions? How are we analyzing that information? How are we viewing it? And ultimately, how are we making decisions off of that? And then that last aspect that we're touching on is that system of engagement for open data. So now after all this, we have the system of record, we have the system of insights. Now we need to make this available to the public and how we're operating as a city in metrics, KPIs, key performance indicators, things of that nature. And cover this slide real quick. So this is the aspect, you'll see the cloud there right in the middle of the city. And this is feeding the open data initiatives and performance. This is kind of where it sits and how that is being utilized and pushed out. We kind of say smart communities. Smart communities is somewhat of a buzzword, but it is important how we're operating and utilizing technology to make it work for us and the stakeholders involved. And those are the government leaders, community leaders, NGOs, partners, universities, and ultimately citizens as well. And to dive in a little bit more of I think some of the folks that are on the call from the city internally in what Hector's been driving towards around the governance aspects is so important. These different departments, you folks work in different bureaus, and so that can silo things in a sense when it comes to data and sharing it. How are you governing it? How are you sharing it? What's the importance? What's the sensitivity of that? And following those rules and having stewardships involved in this process, that's going to be so important. So the folks that we have on the phone right now today with the city of Portland, this is where you're key. You are so key in making this data accessible and driving the change, that compass, driving back to that compass in that direction that we all want to go towards. This is where you fit in and following some of those aspects of the system and the initiatives aspects of things. So, open data is available out to the public, and here you can search it, you can discover it, you can use it. Here's an API key for that. Let's download it. Let's do something with it. But now we're focusing the open data and the information out to the public around initiatives. What are our strategic goals for the city? Again, back to that compass, right? It's homelessness, reduce homelessness. How are we doing? What are we doing? Where are we doing it? How much trash have we collected? How much have we cleaned up from them? In sense of what we're driving towards and building these initiatives, our strategic goals, more equitability, reducing housing costs. How are we doing that? We're utilizing bonds. How are we putting that information out to the public in a sense of where that's being spent? How many houses are we creating? How many jobs are we creating around this information? And so those are the types of initiatives, how we do it. And that's how it's communicated out to the public there on the right side. So on the topic of initiatives, you'll see on the right side, we have our open data. We have our website, informative website, and then we have our initiatives inside. And this is the key, the glue of tying that data in to what we're trying to accomplish, and then giving the public that ability to interact with it. Surveys, questions, or communicating with our NGOs and partners of, here's what we're seeing, demographics are missing in this area. This is an initiative we have in equitability. We need to fill this equity data gap, and how do we fill it? Well, we have to work with our partners. We have to have them go out there, get the information in these elusive areas to collect that data. So we bring it back to the government entities and the folks making decisions, and they can make better decisions once they have better data. And kind of back into the different departmental groups that you guys are so important when curating this information and making it available out to the public. You'll see some of the different aspects. So the system that you folks have, that foundational groundwork that you've been building for so long, the public safety, the fire, the EMS, the social services, IT group, land management. And that focus point is where the hub sits. And then once it's pushed out in the open data aspect of things, how are we accessing it? How are we utilizing it around initiatives? This is, again, important. So you have that central open data, but your driving force, your compasses that you guys are driving towards, it's important that we aggregate this information and push it out for how we're making decisions to the public. You know, your trusted collaborators can get access to particular data sets in the system that you guys are all curating and creating. And then your actively engaged public who really participate, and then just making it a more informed public. So building it around these initiatives, around that compass that we're going towards. Focus on that initiative is extremely important here, as that's being pushed out. That information is being aggregated in a sense that it's aligning with your strategic goals for the city. What have the city made a priority as? What have ultimately the citizens have made that priority as well? We're kind of agreeing in it. This is what we want to drive towards. And how are we doing? How are we getting there? And then making that an interactive, not just, you know, searchable, this, and this, but having them see what are these decisions, how they're being made, why they're being made, and also be able to, oh, I want to inform you here. Let's put some surveys in there. How are we doing, or what should we do better? What's happening in the community? We're also partnering with our NGOs and other folks that are getting out there and not touching people that have access to technology, but we're getting that information through them as well. And it's ultimately helping us make better decisions and then sharing that information out with the public. So wrapping this up, concluding, really that driving force, what we all are doing here. I think that's important aspects of things. We all want to be a better community, and we need to make data work for us. We really, you know, it's important of how we utilize that and how we communicate it out to the public, because it can make a change. And sometimes as a technologist, you know, technology can be 10, 20%, 30% of that. But it's the people that have access to this, the decisions that are being made, and how we're living in this ecosystem and driving towards these specific goals that we have as a community. And I think Portland has all these as well. And again, that diving even deeper is creating more affordable housing and other things of that nature. So that's all I have, Hector. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, John, for this presentation. We appreciate that. And please, for those who are looking at this recording, send your questions or comments through our webpage at the smartcitypdx.com at the contact page.